Hello guys, what's up? I'm Foad, back with another video about programming. Guys, I'm so excited for today's video. Now, today's video is going to be about a really important subject in both programming and cybersecurity. It's going to be about encryption. So today we're going to be discussing what is encryption for like 1 or 2 minutes. Then we're going to go ahead and create a piece of code that is hopefully going to allow us to encrypt some passwords and decrypt them, obviously. And we're going to be using some mathematical functions, inverse functions, and all of those fun stuff. Now, for those of you who say mathematics is not useful, mathematics, why do we even learn it and stuff like that? Well, I'm going to prove you're wrong.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Now, stick around to the end of the video to hopefully widen your educational horizon. And without further hesitation, let's jump right into it. Okay guys, so what is encryption? Well, encryption is the process at which we encrypt stuff. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let's get serious here. So encryption is basically like scrambling some data so that others, like thieves, like hackers, they can't access it. So imagine that I want to send you really important information and I don't want anyone else to have access to it. Or if they have access to it, I don't want them to be able to understand what we're talking about, right? And nowadays, we can't basically prevent this from happening. There are a lot of hackers out there that can easily hack your data and get access to it. So we don't want them to be able to understand what we are talking about, right? So it's basically like speaking in another language that the hackers don't know about, or like the bad guys don't know about. And that's what scrambling or encryption does for us. We don't basically need to learn anything new. We're just speaking in our regular language. And when we are trying to send our information, we scramble it. We change the stuff in there so that when someone else get access to it in the middle of the way, they won't know what it's all about. So it's gonna be like some random stuff. But when you receive it, you're gonna decrypt it, and then it's gonna be the same thing as I told you. It's gonna be regular language. You know what I'm talking about? So a simple example is that I wanna send you, for example, my password. And let's say my password is 10, number 10. And I don't want anyone else to know what it is. So I'm gonna scramble it and turn it into a random digit, like a letter. Like for example, let's say we turn it into, I don't know, hello. Now, a thief or a hacker will not be able to understand this is my password, right? Because it's just saying hello, right? And when I send it to you, you're gonna decrypt it and you're gonna see that it is 10. Now you know what my password is, but they have something that is not my password, it's just hello, right? So that's basically the idea behind encrypting and decrypting. Now the next step is gonna be to explain you guys what we're gonna do for our code today, and then we're gonna get into our code. Alright guys, so now I'm gonna explain you how we're gonna go ahead and make this code. And there are gonna be 2 steps. Number 1, we have to encrypt. I'm gonna just say N. And number 2, decrypt, right? Now for encryption, as I've told you at the beginning of the video, we're gonna go ahead and use some mathematical function. Now for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and use y is equal to x. We know this is a mathematical function. This is the easiest you can get. Now for this function, we're gonna give our x is input. Remember that. So this is our input, right? Now let's say I want to encrypt the password 10, right? This is my password, and we're gonna encrypt it. Okay. So now our y is gonna be 10 again, right? This is gonna be our encrypted password. We're just imagining. Now, when we're gonna decrypt, we're gonna go ahead and use the inverse function. So the inverse function of this, and the inverse function is just gonna be x is equal to y, because this is how it is. Now let's go ahead and make it a little more harder. Let's say we have y is equal to 2x, right? Now we're gonna have our input 10, which is our password, and our encrypted password is gonna be 20. Why? Because 2 times 10 is 20. Now for the decryption step, we're gonna use the inverse function of this. The inverse function, for example, the f of x, the inverse of it, right? This is how we write inverse. Now the inverse function of this is going to be equal to x is equal to y over 2. And the way that we get it is by saying 2x is equal to y. We're just flipping it around. And we say x is equal to y over 2 because we are dividing 2 from both sides, right? That's how we get it. And now, if we go ahead and give this encrypted password to this inverse function, right, we're going to go ahead and get our input. So to recap it, we have the input 10, we give it to our encryption function, and we get 20 out of it. 20 is the encrypted password, the scrambled password. Then when we want to decrypt it, we use the inverse function, and we saw that the inverse function is this. And when we put 20 instead of y, we're going to go ahead and get 10 out of it, which is what we started with. Cool, huh? Now, if you want to get even, for example, harder, we can go and say, for example, x to the power of 2 plus, I don't know, 3. That is equal to y. And that's our decryption function, our encryption function. And our decryption function is going to be the inverse of it, which I'm going to just write it over here. So the inverse is going to be equal to x is equal to y minus 3 square root. For example, we can use this as our encryption and decryption function. As you can see, we can get as creative as we want, but the only rule that we have here is the function that we choose should have an inverse function. So if we choose, for example, I don't know, y is equal to x2 plus 2x plus 3. Why am I writing vertically? Okay, this is not gonna have a inverse function as far as I know. So the only rule is gonna be that. Now let's go ahead and get into the programming. Okay, it's coding time right now. What? Why am I wearing a different shirt? Well, when I was filming the video and I was done filming it, after like about an hour, I realized my laptop screen wasn't recording the whole time. So I have to record the whole thing again. I teach everything and now I have to teach it again. So yeah, that's why. So now let's get into the code and do it as quickly as possible. So the first thing that we're going to do as usual is to create a folder or a project, and I've done that here, and it's called teaching.py. Now the only library that we're going to be using for this project is the math library. So we're going to import that, import math. And this is only used for the function that we talked about earlier, the mathematical function. So the part that now we're going to be describing is the encode part. So we're going to define a function, which is our mathematical function, and call it encode. Then we tell it to use the Unicode value, and we will get this Unicode value later. I'll show you how to get it. Then for now, I'm going to just pass it and return. We're not going to define anything yet. So PSW, which is our password, is equal to input, enter your password. Okay? So we've input the password. Now we want to know how long the password is, so we can use the value in our for loop. So we say the length of PSW, which is our password, is equal to, we use the function len or len and PSW. That will hopefully return the length of our password that our user have input. So we go and say encrypted password, or for short nPSW, is equal to a list. Now this list is empty now, and we're going to fill it by going through a for loop and changing all the letters using the encode function that we've defined up there, and changing them and encode them. So now we go ahead and define our for loop. So we say for, I'm going to use x in the range of length of our PSW. We're going to say encoded. So encoded is equal to encode. It's a function, right? So this function here is the one that we've defined up here. So as I've told you, we're gonna first get the Unicode value for our letter, which is in our password. Then we're gonna do some mathematics with it and return it back. So in order to get the Unicode value, we use a function called ORD. This function will return the Unicode value for any letter given. So we go ahead and say PSW X. And this X is for our for loop, and hopefully with this, we're gonna go through every single letter in our password. Or it can be a number as well, or any symbol. Then we go ahead and say in PSW, which is our encrypted password, dot append. This dot append function is gonna add a value to the end of the list. And we're gonna say str, we're gonna turn it into a string, encoded. So as you can see, we are using this function to turn this PSW to this Unicode value into an encrypted value. But we haven't defined anything in our encoded function, so let's do that right now. We go ahead and say encoded is equal to, we can say Unicode value plus 2. That's a simple way to encode it. We just add 2. We can, as I've told you, we can make this as hard as we can. But the only thing that is like concerning is that this function should have an inverse function mathematically. And the inverse function of this, so if we say y is equal to x plus 2, the inverse function is x is equal to y minus 2. Okay. So for now, we're gonna use this, and then we're gonna make it like a little bit more complicated. Now we go and return encoded, and this way we have encoded our password. Just for ourselves to see what we've done, we're gonna use an f string here to print out our password, the encoded. So encoded is in PSW. Bam, it's encoded. Now the next part is gonna be to decode it. So I make a comment here, decode, and we define our decode function. Now this decode function that we are defining right now is basically the inverse of the one that we've defined up in our code. So it's again similar. Decoded is equal to, now this time we're gonna have to turn this whole thing into an integer. So int math, I'm gonna explain you why I'm turning it into an integer. Math dot, no, we don't need the math right now. So we can say encoded minus 2. That way we have defined our inverse function. So we're gonna return decoded as well. That's our decoding function being defined. Now we just say decode PSW is equal to, as you can see now, it's not a list anymore. It's gonna be a string because we're gonna display it, right? So we're gonna define another for loop for x in the range of, again, length PSW, because the length doesn't change, just the values change. So that's that. Decoded is equal to decode integer in PSW x. So when I'm using this integer here, I presume that we don't need to use the int function here. So I'm just gonna delete that. Now we're gonna say decoded password is equal to decode password plus, this is important, CHR or character of the decoded value. Okay, this is a typo here. Okay, so now we're doing the inverse of the ORD function. That time we had a letter and we find the Unicode value for that letter. This time we have a Unicode value and we want to find the letter for that. That's why we're using this function over here. And the last thing is gonna be to print it off for ourselves. So print f the decoded is dpsw. Great, and that's basically our project being done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and run it for you so you can see what we've done. So I have CMD open here. We're gonna say python teaching.py. So as you can see, it's asking for me to enter password. Now it doesn't look quite good. That's why I'm gonna change this here to something like that, so it looks a bit nicer. So we're going Python teaching. So enter your password. For now, I'm just gonna go ahead and say my password is AB, so we can see what's going on. So when I press, you see it says the encoded is 99 and 100. Now if you go ahead and search, you can see that the Unicode value for A, the letter A, is 97. That's why when we add 2 to it, it's gonna be 99. Now the thing that you're gonna be transferring, and which is basically the encoded thing, is this list here. So for a random person, if they come to it, they won't know what it is because they don't know what function you've used here to encrypt it. And the person that is going to receive this is going to use the decode and use these values here that you've given it, the encoded values, and get the initial password back using the inverse function that we've defined here. Pretty fascinating, huh? Okay, so now I'm going to make the inverse function a little bit more complicated. I'm going to say Unicode value to the power of 2, which is basically Unicode value times Unicode value. This whole thing to the power of 2, okay, plus 5. Sorry, plus 5. Now in the inverse function is where we're going to use the sqrt function from the math. So we say math dot sqrt, which is the square root. That's not how we spell math, right? sqrt. Okay, now there's something else that I have to point out. When we use the sqrt, it naturally returns a float value, even though we don't have any decimal like number. So I'm gonna just turn that into an integer real quick, because the value that we're gonna use here should be an integer, not a float. Bam. We use sqrt encoded -5. Okay, so let's run it again. Python teaching. Again, we're gonna go with A and B. As you can see, it gives some really like random value here, the encrypted value. And when we decrypt it, we get our initial password back. So you see, the only thing that is concerning and is basically limiting you is how you design your function and the inverse function, the mathematical function, to decode and encode. That's basically the only limit. Now I'm gonna run it one more time and use a much more complicated password, something like this, which has letters and numbers and everything. I'm gonna hit enter. You see, we have this really big list of values here, which if you show it to someone, they're not gonna understand what it is. And when we use the decode function, we get our original password back. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed and learned something new. And as you can see, mathematics is useful in your life, especially if you're a programmer. Now the only thing that I'm going to tell you is to hit the subscribe button, because just in a few days, I'm going to be posting a new series for machine learning. Guys, this is really important. This is going to be a really big announcement. I'm going to make lots of videos about machine learning. And if you don't know what machine learning... Anyways, if you don't know what machine learning is, it's basically the groundbreaking technology which has been around like for 10 years or something. It's really good. We can basically simulate the human brain, and that's the exact thing we're going to learn. I'm going to teach you neural networks, which is basically simulating a human brain. Isn't that fascinating? So go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.